All right. Hello everyone. We are back for another round. So we're finally reading the results section today of the article. And so let's jump right into it. Assessment of disciplinary literacy by evaluating peer reviews. So as a reminder, disciplinary literacy for them means how well a college student can understand the article in their discipline or field of research. And so in this case, it's biology. The impact of the curricular interventions on students' peer review ability, a form of disciplinary literacy, was measured qualitatively by an independent researcher using 3 unique instruments. So qualitatively just means measured based on numbers, and they used 3 instruments. Students' peer reviews from both courses were de-identified by the instructor, and their quality was assessed by the independent researcher GSM using the Review Quality Instrument RQI, and all of these acronyms were discussed in the methods section. So if you want to know that, watch my previous video on the methods. The pre-review review assessment rubric, and a rubric that was created by the students themselves. Table 2 and Figure 3A summarize the results of the 4 peer review events in the full peer review curriculum. And then Table 3 and Figure 3B summarize the results of the 3 peer review events in the peer review module that was embedded into a disciplinary course. So as a reminder, there was a full-length peer review education for a semester-long course, and then there was also just a single workshop for a single course or disciplinary course. Okay, methods, context, curriculum, and peer review activities. For a description of each peer review event. Oh, I skipped that. Course 2. Okay. Anyways, students in the full curriculum, Course 1, showed increases in peer review ability after each peer review event using all 3 evaluation tools. So that's a good sign. Based on all 3 types of measurements, students who were in the full course showed improvement in their ability to peer review a research article. Basically means they got better at analyzing research. Students in Course 2 showed an increase in peer review quality throughout the duration of the course using all 3 evaluation tools, mostly reflected in the transition from individual reviews to group reviews. So to me, I see that as they had the biggest improvement in their peer review ability when they were going from individually reviewing to group reviewing. So biggest improvement going from doing individual reviews to group reviews. Overall, and depending on the measurement tool used, the full curriculum resulted in a 25 to 42% increase in students' peer review ability. Wow. Depending on the measurement though, which was comparable to the 14 to 40% improvements seen as a result of the embedded module. So there's a wide variation there. So I guess not everyone improves at the same rate for peer review. So 25 to 42% for the full curriculum and 14 to 40% for the embedded module. Measurement of the improvement was lowest on the pre-review assessment because many reviews were close to the ceiling on this tool. Oh, okay. So basically, if you have a ruler, let me draw. If you have a ruler, when they're close to the ceiling, that basically means most people's measurements are towards the end of the ruler. So if we have 0 to 12 inches, and if you're all towards close to the end of the ruler, then there's not much difference because it's hard to judge fractions of an inch when you're all scoring pretty high. So that's still a good sign. It means that most people were as good as they could be. At the final peer review event, which occurred after the completion of the interventions, students' reviews in both classes earned 80 to 97% of the total maximum score possible for each assessment tool. Remarkable because the RQI and pre-review tools were designed to assess the quality of reviews written by experts, not novices or other learners. So that's another really good sign. They're scoring 80 to 97% compared to experts. Many students elected to publish their reviews, implying that they were proud of the final products. These data suggest that while the baseline quality of peer reviews written by an untrained undergraduate, a novice, and I guess I'd be considered there, is mediocre as might be expected, these disciplinary literacy skills can be developed through an intentional curriculum that offers explicit instruction, iterative practice, and opportunities to authentically participate in community of practice. So basically means that baseline quality, so without any training, undergrads are pretty bad, as you would expect. But it can be improved if you teach them. So you can, if you teach them directly and repeatedly, that's what iterative means. So it can be improved if you teach them directly or repeatedly, and allow them to participate in the scientific community. Alrighty. Assessment of students' perceptions of science literacy, identity, and belonging by thematic analysis. So students' perceptions of their own development were captured in both courses through weekly reflection writing in response to specific prompts. Reflections were de-identified by the instructor and then provided to the independent evaluators for thematic analysis. So thematic analysis, basically they were just identifying what general topic were they talking about. Topics were they talking about? So results from this analysis demonstrated that students developed an affiliation with the science community of practice over the course of the interventions. While many students were science majors, hence early career scientists, a few used the course as an opportunity to engage in and learn about the science as non-practitioners, meaning they don't plan to become scientists. In this sense, students already identified as novices within the community of practice or transitioned from that of an outsider to a novice. Through participating in the peer review curriculum, students reflected on their literacy, identity, and belonging within the community of practice. Table 4 summarizes whether each student showed evidence of these themes by the conclusion of the interventions, and the codebook used for thematic analysis along with exemplary quotes from students, as in Appendix 2. So basically, Table 4 is just their evidence. Showed evidence. Okay, literacy, or their ability as scientists. In both courses, the peer review curriculum improved students' perceptions of their own scientific literacy. Scientific literacy included the students' understanding of how scientific knowledge is generated, their engagement in science practices, and how they perceive the value of these practices. For example, students coded as scientifically literate, or students identified as scientifically literate, were able to describe the peer review process and its value, as well as feel confident about performing a peer review. And that's what we want to see. They feel confident about it. So this is seen in Sam's journal entry when she commented on her confidence in performing peer review after the intervention. She says, after thoroughly reviewing the standard requirements for publication, as well as the scientific theory supporting the article, I felt surprisingly well equipped to offer constructive feedback on the assigned preprint, and a preprint is just a rough draft. So, a nuanced development and then strengthening of scientific literacy was seen in the full curriculum over each of the 4 units. Nuanced development would just be like many small effects were developed, then strengthened. So in units 1 and 2, students primarily reflected on their new understanding of what peer review is, who engages in peer review, and how to do one. In their early journal entries, students shared many of the misconceptions that they held about peer reviews, including that reviews were done after publication and that authors were responsible for recruiting reviewers themselves. So these are 2 misconceptions. Misconception 1 and misconception 2. So this is seen in Chiara's reflections when she states, I had this idea that there was not an editor involved, but rather that the author of the study themselves was responsible for reaching out and facilitating the process. Students went on to refute these misunderstandings, even explaining why they were wrong. Within this unit, students also shared their perceived value of the peer review process. Most students suggested superficial benefits, such as the ability to edit articles prior to publishing them, but did not yet demonstrate a sophisticated understanding of the value of peer review plays for science. So they mostly focused on how it benefits being able to edit them. I guess that is considered superficial. But this is in Unit 2, I believe, because it says, in Unit 3, during which students completed Review 2, the first review after receiving some instruction and teaching, all students discussed feeling confident and comfortable or prepared for the assignment. That's good. Students explained that the course activities and materials helped to clarify what was expected of their review. So they knew what they were doing. In Unit 4, when students evaluated others' reviews, there were obvious improvements in students' depth of knowledge of the value of peer review. Several students were able to elaborate on the importance of reviewers in producing high-quality publications. Chiara shared, this feature is incredibly valuable to the process as it allows for the most amount of feedback for the author, as the more feedback that is provided for the review, the better the review can potentially be. Chiara's comments demonstrated an understanding that the review process contributes to how scientific knowledge is disseminated or shared. Students in Course 2 were also seen to strengthen their literacy through critique of discipline-specific papers, so such as vaccines, and offering constructive feedback on peer presentations that occurred outside of the embedded peer review module. So Course 2, we're moving on to Course 2 now, which was specifically the workshop style. Lastly, students in both courses mentioned that through reading and critiquing reviews made by their peers, they were able to sharpen their own skills in preparation for their final reviews. So we're hearing lots of good news here. Many students discussed their plans for their final review, each noting unique areas of improvement. Chiara was inspired by her classmates' use of a peer review rubric to keep track of necessary comments, stating that she would remember to use it in the future. Over the course of the semester, students first developed their knowledge, value, and practice of peer review, and then further strengthened these points through repeated writing and critiquing of reviews. So I guess they continued to develop their skill of peer reviewing. Develop their skill of peer reviewing. So identity. In both courses, students' perception of their science identity was influenced by their own personal and professional identities. So students who demonstrated a strong science identity talked about science with others in and out of class. They described the ways in which their newly learned skills could be applied to their academic and postgraduate careers, and expressed their validation in the science field because of others who looked like them. So Maddie wrote, "The critical thinking skills I gained from this peer review course have really started kicking in. I also feel confident that if my experiment works, I'll be able to write about it for a manuscript." So earlier in her reflection, Maddie explained how learning to analyze and critique research data helped her to overcome a roadblock in her research lab. "I'm also considering writing a thesis for my senior year because of the confidence I have gained in research, reading, writing, and reviewing." Maddie demonstrated that through her reflection of her own experiences, she planned to engage in future disciplinary literacy activities that will likely further solidify her science identity. So basically, she will continue to participate in activities that strengthen her skills as a scientist, and that will bring her confidence. I did skip over something I wanted to mention towards the beginning of this paragraph, where it says students who had a strong science identity talked about science in and out of class. So that is one way they identified having a strong science identity. They also described the ways in which their newly learned skills could be applied to their academic and postgraduate careers. So that's their second qualification. And then the most vague part is express their validation in the science field because of others who looked like them. So basically, I guess I'm guessing ethnicity, but maybe that's racist. But as I said before, a lot of STEM is occupied by predominantly white and Asian populations. I'm an example of that. And so there's still not many other minority groups. And so there's a lot of movement to help empower more minorities to join STEM. Okay. So belonging in the academic community of practice. So COP is community of practice, aka community of scientists. So science literacy and identity within the community of practice facilitated a student's progression from novice to expert when they felt like they belonged. So I guess part of being considered an expert is also feeling like you belong, you're allowed to belong to stand alongside experts. Ooh, that's a very weirdly phrased sentence. So basically, they felt like they could stand alongside experts. That's part of they felt like they belonged. So we identified two spaces in which students felt like they belonged. The academic space consisted of in-person and virtual classrooms where students interacted with one another. The professional space is where students interact with science professionals, e.g. researchers, journal editors, and expert reviewers. Engaging with classmates through discussion and co-writing peer reviews reinforced students' sense of belonging. That's good. Within the academic space, so within school. A few students felt they belonged in some contexts, but not in others. For example, Isabella explained, "I think discussing the paper in class with people who are on the same level as I am really helped. Here, Isabella explains that the context of a classroom feels safe, but she also goes on to explain that in other contexts where she perceived that there were some members who are different from her, she did not feel as confident. In the past, I have done journal clubs with graduate students, which have been much more difficult for me to feel confident in sharing my thoughts. Today's class really helped me gain more confidence about my ability to review primary research independently. So help me gain more confidence about my ability to review independently. So read research on her own. And then to explain what journal club is where basically a group of scientists come together and discuss a research article. A group of scientists come together to discuss a research article. Okay, hence some students, like Isabella, expressed confidence in academic spaces, but not in professional ones prior to the intervention. So that's prior. And implied that the confidence gained through the intervention could improve her feelings of belonging in professional spaces in the future. So, woo, could improve. That's some hope. Barriers to belonging. Students in both courses most often identified illiteracy, i.e., inadequate knowledge and practices, as a barrier to belonging. So basically, not knowing enough felt like a barrier. Not knowing enough felt like a barrier. This is evident in Alex's journal entry when they mentioned feeling like a wallflower or excluded because of their lack of science experience. I still don't really feel like I'm a part of the scientific community. It is a huge field, and looking at a few papers makes me feel like I'm more of a wallflower than anything else. With my very limited experience, I don't think it'd be right to say that I am part of the community. I'm still going through the initiation rites. Although Alex described feeling like they are on the periphery of the community of practice, they describe their experience as part of an initiation period, which implies that they may see themselves as belonging sometime in the future. So that's still more implying belonging in the future. So belonging in the professional community of practice. Talking with authors and interviewing professional scientists during the interventions allowed for students in both courses to feel like they belonged in the professional space, i.e. transition from a novice to an expert. Maddie described how experts helped to foster her belonging within a group of scientists when she wrote, "Firstly, I was able to make a conversation with a professional and deliver my question in a way that did make sense to them. The points they were making made me feel familiar with other jargon and issues surrounding the process of peer review. I did not feel inadequate or less knowledgeable during these conversations." Maddie found the experience of interacting with others valuable in shaping her sense of being a member of in the community of practice, or community of scientists. Likewise, Kiara wrote in a journal entry about how she perceived others to perceive her. She, the professional scientist, saw me as a student and as a scientist, which is a pretty big deal. I so often do not feel seen or understood in the STEM field, so having this moment to talk to her allowed for me to feel valid in our field. In other words, Kiara's sense of belonging was strengthened through positive reinforcement by those who she saw as experts in the professional science community of practice. So basically, she got validation from some experts, which is pretty good. Validation from some experts. Okay. In their responses, Maddie and Kiara pointed to their science literacy and identity being validated through engaging with experts within the community of practice. All right, so that is the end of the results section. It seems like our results are positive. So to summarize, let's see. So through the intervention of teaching college students to how to peer review, through the intervention of teaching students how to peer review, the benefits they got were they felt like their peer review skills improved. So peer review, again, peer review is just the ability to analyze and give feedback on a research article. To analyze and give feedback on a research article. They felt like they could belong in the community of scientists. And in this case, they were calling it community of practitioners. And then the last one was, belonging. Oh, I've skipped one. That was they felt like they belonged at school. And they felt safe discussing ideas. One barrier they did mention, though, that is still one barrier that is still a concern, is a lack of knowledge. So you can't know what you can't know, and there's a lot to know in biology. But even if you don't know it, you can still try to understand it. And you have to try to understand it in order to learn it anyway. So this is good hope that maybe undergraduates can also start contributing to science by giving feedback on existing research. Okay, but that is the end of the results section, and I will be reading the discussion section on Saturday. So the discussion session will basically be summarizing all of the results and then placing them in a greater context for how important peer review is for both undergraduates and the greater scientific community. So once again, I will be reading the discussion session on Saturday. So if you want to watch the live stream on Saturday, make sure to like and subscribe and leave any questions or comments you have down below, and I will try to answer them as best as I can. But I hope you enjoyed today's live stream. Have a nice day!